أتربي. هاي أتربي. أتربي.
على دينا حلاشين يا هيك حاولنا نقول أنا أقول بقى أنت كلامك
Actually, I don't know what happened,
To the
but let
person
me.
talking.
أنا مني والله ما قاعد كرم سيدين أنا والله ما قاعد كرم سرهم دونيس قف كم هو حوم غلامه قرابات ده ويل كان يدون سوا
Just 2 minutes more and we will start. First of all, okay. Thank you to be with us in the second session. And regarding to our module, it is the second lecture. We will have another 2 lecture. If the God will, we will have another one tomorrow. And then we will have the 4th one. It will be on 9th of October. It will be at the same time like today and tomorrow. So until we can start, I can give the floor to Haneen, my colleague Haneen, to make introductions for my speaker for today from UNDP. So the floor was you, Haneen.
Hi, everybody. I hope you all are having a good day. Today, our speaker is Tarneem Ashoush. She's an environment program analyst at the UNDP. Tarneem is a dedicated sustainability advocate. She has master's in environmental and energy management from the University of Twente in Netherlands and a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering. She has a very diverse background spanning engineering, consulting, management, and governance, where she is very deeply committed to advancing sustainable practices or combining climate change at both corporate and global levels. She is very passionate. I'm pretty sure you're going to learn so much from her today. If you have any questions, you could ask at the end of today's session. The material, we'll try to share it with you all via email when we're done. And yeah, hi Tarneem, I hope all is good and we're very honored to have you with us today.
Thank you, Haneen, for the great introduction, and thank you, Ahmed, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you today. So if everyone's here already, maybe we can get started.
Yeah, let's start.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's start. Yeah.
Great.
We have
Let me
many
share.
people will join us during the session, but we can start to be on time.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen. Now you can see my screen now.
We can.
You can, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I can do
we
it.
can.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Okay, great. So hi again. As Ahmed just mentioned, this is the second session of the climate-based knowledge module, and it focuses more on climate science and climate impacts. I have actually prepared an introduction of myself and UNDP, but it wasn't as good as Haneen, so I'm just gonna skip and get straightforward to the objectives. So by the end of today, you might aim, or you would aim to be able to identify the key climate change indicators, understand climate impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems, and lastly, hopefully make this link between climate science and disaster risk reduction, which is, I assume, the broader component of this fellowship program. So, but even maybe before we start, we can have some more warm-up question, and maybe you can type in the chat box, what's the most visible climate change effect in your community? heat, air pollution, desertification, flooding, rainfall, extreme heat, water scarcity, losing biodiversity, heat again, weather. Okay, great. Very hot summers. Perfect. Yes. So very hot is very, very redundant. And it's great to have this answer because we're going to talk about that, of course, today. But one thing that I have noticed in the comments, which is very good to make this distinction now, air pollution. So basically, air pollution and greenhouse gases, these are two distinct things, let's say. So air pollutants, these affect in the local place that they're at. So let's say SOx, NOx, carbon monoxide, some organic or not organic, some pollutants that are in the air. So these are air pollutants, not greenhouse gases. They affect the local place, not the global climate. And also they have not very prolonged impacts. So their impact is short-timed and it's only in the local place that they're at. Whereas greenhouse gases, they impact the entire atmosphere or the entire climate of the globe, and they have very prolonged lifetime in the atmosphere, which can reach thousands years, like CO2 and other greenhouse gases that I'm sure you learned about in the first session of this module. Yeah, very good answers, where I think you already know very well what we're going to discuss today. So yeah, also before we start, let me introduce you to the IPCC. You might already know about the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it's the United Nations body for assessing the science related to climate change. So in other words, this is the scientific arm of the United Nations informing the UN with science-based evidence, everything about climate change, its causes, its impacts, even solutions on how to combat and best adapt to climate change. So it's very important when we speak about climate science to know what the IPCC is and their efforts, and especially that many of the information that I'm using today in my session is based on IPCC references. So first objective of today is, yes, to identify climate change indicators. So let's get started with that. So, or maybe before that, also another thing to think of is indicators in general. I think someone has their mic open. Okay. So I'm sorry, can you please mute your mic? Thank you. So for indicators in general, when you think about indicators, we even know the word KPIs, or key performance indicators, for any business or for any organization. Indicator as a word, it means, I'm sorry, can you mute your mic? هاجر. هاجر, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you please mute your mic? Thank you. So indicators, as a word, it refers to some parameters that you are willing to monitor in order to inform you about the status of something you're willing to achieve, right? So in terms of climate change, or in the context of climate change indicators are these parameters that we monitor and measure and keep an eye on to inform us about the status of climate change and where we're at in terms of progression of the climate change and its impacts. So according to the IPCC, of course, there are multiple indicators that we can look at when it comes to climate change. Mohammed, I can see your hand raised, but maybe we can keep all the questions till the end, just for the sake of time, or maybe after each section. So So one indicator is, or all the indicators in general, these are physical responses to climate change. So when the climate changes, some physical parameters or some physical indicators are changing also as response to these changing climates. So one thing, as you all mentioned, surface temperature, we can experience increase in the average surface temperature. It's very prominent. We can all already sense it. Something else is water vapor in the atmosphere. Precipitation, someone mentioned rainfall, which is one form of precipitation. Severe events like heat waves, also someone mentioned that, like storms, sandstorms, droughts, floods, etc. These all fall under severe events. Glaciers in the poles, ice, whether ocean ice or land ice, and lastly, sea level. If you look at these indicators more closely, you can find or you can figure some trends or some, let's say, parameters or some factors in these indicators. One thing is that some of them are causes and some of them are basically consequences of impacts, of climate change impacts. So one thing, if you look at atmospheric water vapor is one greenhouse gas in itself. So we would like to monitor the concentration of atmospheric water vapor in the atmosphere, which is one of the causes as a greenhouse gas of climate change, right? So one thing, we're monitoring one source of climate change, and some other parameters or indicators like surface tension, like precipitation. These are basically consequences or changes that are happening due to the change in climate. So these indicators could be causes, could be effects or impacts. These also have different natures in terms of the time span. So we can see that, for instance, surface temperature is a very prolonged impact. We can see that the average surface temperature increasing over time. This happens over decades in order for the average temperature itself to increase by, let's say, 0.5 degrees centigrade or 1, etc. Also, let's say glaciers or sea level rise. In order for sea level to change and rise, this also happens over decades, not just instantaneously. Whereas if we look at, for instance, severe weather events, we'll find that these events, they are very severe, they're very high intensity, and they're also very short in timing. So the heat waves, for instance, we can find that the heat waves occur over a very short period, maybe a few days. Storms, they can last for less than an hour, for only several minutes, but they have severe impact and effects on biodiversity, human lives, even economic losses can occur based on or from severe events. So we can see also the difference in the time span of each indicator. Something else that we can, that's the fourth thing that we can notice, is the interlinkages between these indicators. So for instance, if we look at surface temperature, of course, when surface temperature increases, we can find that the glaciers will have or will melt. And when glaciers melt, sea level will rise. So these are all interlinked indicators. They work or they happen simultaneously. They all affect one another, which gives you also an indication of the sophistication and difficulty to be able to model climate change over time and to predict how climate change will impact our world in the future. So speaking of the climate change indicators, we of course have some scenarios to tell us more about how would our future look like if we do this or we don't do that. So the IPCC, again, they came up with the representative concentration pathways, or the RCPs. These are the base for all the climate scenarios from the IPCC. And they are the approach that they took in order to simulate or predict our futures. So we have 4 key pathways with varying emissions of greenhouse gases, which is, in other words, how we will act, how we will have more mitigation actions, and then how our future until 2100, the year 2100, would look like. So we have 4 scenarios. The worst case is RCP 8.5. You don't have to, of course, memorize all these numbers, but the two key scenarios are RCP 8.5 and RCP 2.6. So 8.5 refers to the radiative forcing. Radiative forcing is related to the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So this is the highest if we go business as usual, if we keep going the same way as we are right now, or that was even modeled back in 2014, I think. This is how our future would look like in 2100. And on the contrary, we have RCP 2.6, which refers to the low emission pathway, which is the highest mitigation impact that we can reach to. And this is how our future would look like in the year 2100. So what exactly do these indicators or do these scenarios correspond to in terms of the indicators? So here are three key indicators that we have. So the first thing is the change in average surface temperature. That's A. B is change in average precipitation, and the last one is change in average sea level. And for each indicator, we can see both scenarios. As we said, the low emission and the high emission, the best case and the worst case, on the right and on the left. And of course, we can see how severely the change is going to be if we don't take any action and we keep going as business as usual. And of course, also referring again to the interlinkages between all the indicators, this tells you about the complexity of this modeling. So now if we narrow down a bit to the Arab region and how these indicators are changing with the changing climate that we're facing. So first thing is the temperature is rising faster than the global average. In some sources, it refers to doubling the global average in the temperature rise. So in general, if the temperature is rising by 0.5 degrees per decade globally, then in the Arab region, it will be rising by 1 degree per decade. So that's, of course, a much higher rate that we wouldn't prefer to have. Something else that we're experiencing in the Arab region is the high frequency and severity of extreme weather events. That's globally, but also we can sense it very well in the Arab region. As you all mentioned, the heat waves and the droughts, they're becoming more frequent and more severe in its intensity, as well as, of course, the storms and the floods. There were multiple floods that we can all refer to. There was one, I think, in 2023 in Libya, and people were lost for days, and there were even casualties. This even happens in Egypt along the Mediterranean coast. We can see a lot of economic losses almost every year, or maybe each 2-3 years, in cities like Alexandria, where coastal flooding is very intense. Something else is the decreasing precipitation, as you also mentioned, and it's very much affecting our desert ecosystems and areas where they rely heavily on precipitation. And we can already see the changing biodiversity and the changing well-being of people there. One other thing is the rising sea level. And if we talk about the Arab region, the Nile Delta in Egypt is recognized as one of the world's most vulnerable hotspots when it comes to sea level rise, where the rising water levels in the Mediterranean Sea could submerge the whole area of the Nile Delta with only 1 meter of increase. So only 1 meter in the sea level rise, or only 1 meter of rise in the sea level in the Mediterranean would cause the whole area to be submerged and infinitely, it won't be there anymore. This area is the Nile Delta region. It's very important and crucial for our GDP. Almost 30% of our GDP comes from the Nile Delta. Most of our agricultural activities are concentrated there. Millions of people live there. So that's gonna be a disaster, of course, if that happens. And this is what is expected or predicted by the IPCC by the year 2100. One last thing is increased salinity in coastal aquifers, but not only in coastal aquifers. This is the direct impact, the salinity and coastal zones or aquifers in the coastal zones, since when sea level rises, seawater intrusion rates are higher to the aquifers along the coasts. But also another indirect salinization effect is in the coastals that are not, the aquifers that are not on the coasts, is that when fresh water becomes less abundant because of, as we were saying, decreased precipitation or also any other factors. So we can see that people tend to withdraw more water from the aquifers, which tend to increase their the salinity of these aquifers. So I hope that for now this is clear and you've gained some information or some knowledge about the indicators. If you have any questions, please take notes. We will keep questions until the end. And now we can move to the second item on our agenda, which is climate change impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems. So first, in order to know the impacts on ecosystems, we have to define what an ecosystem is. So an ecosystem is defined as, also by the IPCC, a functional unit consisting of living organisms, so a biotic component, the non-living environment, the abiotic component, and the interactions within and between them. We have several types of ecosystems. We can have aquatic ecosystems, and in the aquatic ecosystems, we have whether marine or freshwater ecosystems. So marine ecosystems are saltwater ecosystems, so seas, oceans, etc. And we can have also terrestrial ecosystems, which are land ecosystems, so forests, deserts, etc. So as an example, if we take marine ecosystems or marine environments, we'll see hundreds, thousands, or even millions of species living in the marine ecosystems. So these are the biotic component, and there are interactions among the different species, right? They feed on one another and they interact with one another. So this is the interaction within the biotic component, and there are also interactions. We have, of course, the abiotic components. So we have the sunlight going into the sea, we have the water itself, we have the dissolved oxygen in the water, for instance, and so on. And we can see the interaction, for instance, the fish intake of the oxygen from the dissolved oxygen through the fins. So that's some interaction among the different components of the ecosystem. I hope this is clear. So this ecosystem is more than just the living organisms there. It's way beyond that. And all the ecosystems also, it's very important to remember that human beings are part of this ecosystem. We should not treat ecosystems or nature as some isolated component or factor that we do not relate to or we do not interact with. We are part of this ecosystem, and any impacts on this ecosystem are going to directly affect our own well-being as well. So if we look at the impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems, of course, climate change impacts, we can see shifts in species distribution and habitats. I'm sure, of course, we're all experiencing such changes or shifts in our regions. We can see coral bleaching in the Red Sea. That is due to the ocean acidification. And the ocean acidification is one of the climate change impacts due to dissolving more carbon dioxide into the ocean and the seas due to the higher concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere. And of course, we know that the oceans and seas are, or especially oceans, are one big or the biggest sink for greenhouse gases. So coral bleaching is one huge impact when it comes to biodiversity and ecosystems impacted by climate change. We also had, someone said, desertification and loss of oases biodiversity. Wetland degradation, of course, and lastly, also threats to migratory birds and pollinators. And we can see that sometimes some species like birds are affected, but not all species can migrate. So sometimes when some species, we'll see in the next slide, when some species are endangered, they get extinct because they are not able to migrate to another zone with better climatic condition for their habitat. As we said, that this impacts also human beings. So one huge impact, of course, is economic losses, as, for example, coral bleaching in the Red Sea, again, in Egypt. In the Red Sea, a lot of corals are losing their characteristics, losing their colors, and a lot of tourist activities, diving, snorkeling, etc., was actually with the aim of diving and coral reefs attraction to tourists. So losing this biodiversity can cause economic losses to human beings. And also regarding the food chain, because we know, actually this figure is not even very accurate because it's like a circle or like a closed loop, whereas the food chain is more of a linear, it's a chain, it's a linear process or a linear system. So we can see that, for instance, the gazelle feeds on the, the gazelle feeds on plants, and then the lion eats the gazelle, etc. So there's a chain, right? So if some disturbance happens to this chain, some organism in between gets extinct because this species no longer has their suitable ecosystem and habitat, then the whole chain will be disturbed. Any other species feeding on this extinct species will get starved and might as well not be able to adapt and get endangered itself. Or other species that were fed on by the extinct species may get very abundant and cause adverse also impacts. We could see in, I think, several years back, some outbreak in rodent species in, I don't remember, in Australia or where exactly, but we could see this outbreak and how it was horrible, and it's very scary. Rodents were everywhere on the streets. They caused a lot of economic losses and harm to the buildings and bridges even, and it was a disaster at the time. So it's not only that ecosystems are impacted with no relevance to human beings, it's all an integrated system, an integrated environment with every component affecting the other. In terms of extinction and biodiversity loss, we have the IUCN Red List, and the IUCN is the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So this is a global environmental network composed of governments, experts, NGOs, etc., for or with the aim of conservation of nature and biodiversity species. Sorry. So in the IUCN, they have a red list, and this red list is a list of all the species endangered of extinction. So on the red list, we have 47,000 species threatened with extinction, which corresponds to more than a quarter, 28% of all the assessed species. That's more than a quarter of the living species in the world no longer existing. Sounds scary, sounds very alarming. So this is due to, of course, multiple reasons, also due to some other factors that are not very much climate related, also, but they are human related. Like, for instance, hunting and other factors, but one or two factors are habitat loss, which is due to climate change or climatic pressure. So increased temperatures, let's say, or more frequent severe weather events that these species cannot adapt to or survive. One species is the button blue butterfly. This is a butterfly species that used to be abundantly exist in Sinai in Egypt, and it's no longer observed in St. Catherine region, sorry. It's no longer present there. We can no longer observe this butterfly there. It's a very tiny butterfly, and it's very beautiful. It's blue and it's very shiny in the sunlight, but it's no longer there because of climate change and the climatic pressures. So that's also, I hope, this is clear in terms of ecosystems and biodiversity and how they relate to climate change and climate change indicators. And one last point about climate indicators and DRR, maybe if you can also type in the chat box, how do you think climate indicators relate to disaster risk reduction? Anyone? Helps identifying the key challenges to climate change. Yes, it's the point where should we start to create solutions? It's like an alarm, exactly. Very good. Anyone else? Help us predict, prepare for, and reduce the impacts of climate-related disasters? Yes. 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 Very good. Exactly. Oh, that's a long answer. My laptop, please. Yeah. Okay. I don't think I'll be able to read all this. Just for the sake of time, of course. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Perfect. So basically, as you all said, climate indicators, the ones that we just discussed, like temperature rise, rainfall variability, they inform us about the risks that we're about to have. And hence, they can help us be well and more prepared to mitigate these risks. So including early warning systems, for instance, that rely on real-time climate data. And this climate data is actually... I'm sorry, can you mute your mic? Yeah, thank you. So if we can take a look at these indicators, these 4 indicators, temperature rise, for instance, there's a difference also between the indicators and the risks. So these are 2 very distinct concepts that are sometimes tricky when you get into the discussions, right? So temperature rise, for instance, this is an indicator, whereas heat stress and droughts, these are the resulting risks from this indicator. So temperature rise causes risks of heat stress and risks of droughts. Similarly, sea level rise, for instance, as an indicator, it causes risks of coastal flooding and salinization. Rainfall variability causes risks of flash floods and agricultural losses. And lastly, extreme weather events, they cause human and economic vulnerability and risks of loss of lives and economic value. So also it's very important to make this distinction between indicators and risks and how at the same time they're distinct, but they're related and they inform, indicators can inform policy on risk reduction and risk mitigation. When it comes to disaster risk reduction, this is more on the link between the 3 things that we have discussed so far. So climate indicators, risk reduction, and ecosystems and nature. So one solution or one disaster risk reduction approach could be nature-based solutions, including wetlands, that buffer floods and storm surges. And as we just mentioned, floods are risks, climate-induced risks. So wetlands that are nature-based solutions can help mitigate this kind of risk. Abdullah. Thank you. Something else is mangroves that protect coastal zones from cyclones and sea level rise. And we can see a lot of mangrove projects in the Red Sea region, because the Red Sea region is very suitable. The habitat is suitable for growing mangroves. And one form of nature-based solutions is ecosystem-based adaptation. So this includes, for instance, biodiversity conservation, which supports food and water security and food security, because as we discussed, the food chain and how the whole chain would be affected if only one species was endangered and any disturbance occurred in this chain. Another thing is community-led conservation that builds local adaptive capacity. This is also one sort of ecosystem-based adaptation for disaster risk reduction more on the societal level. So that was brief. That was the references that I used. And thank you so much for listening. And it's time to open the floor if you have any questions. Any questions? I could see.
I
colleagues.
think all of them will raise their hand right now.
Yeah.
And chat box have many and many messages.
Let's see.
Yes. You can manage the participant as you love their name.
Okay,
You have
thank you.
your mind, the floor with you.
Thank you. Maybe we can listen to colleagues with their hands raised. So Muhammad Hidi. Go ahead, please. Muhammad, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you.
So, okay, I want to speak about my region, Gabes. So, in my community of Gabes, Tunisia, the most visible climate change indicators include rising temperatures, irregular rainfall, and increasing water scarcity. These changes have led to the degradation of oases, soil salinization, and reduced agricultural productivity. Combined with industrial pollution, these impacts threaten both the environment and local livelihoods, making climate adaptation and sustainable water management urgent priorities for our region.
Thank you very much, Muhammad, for your information and your contribution, also giving us more context in what's going on in Tunisia. Thank you. Muhammad Al-Hidawi.
Hey, Tarneem, I hope that you're doing okay.
Thank you.
I was just wondering about how to build the technical knowledge to cope up with the understanding of the charts. As you mentioned in the session, you had some wonderful insights about using you explained some wonderful insights using the charts. So as you and your very technical background in environmental engineering, although within my field of study, I don't have that maybe technical knowledge to cope up with if I had some charts playing around I1.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
Muhammad, I can't hear you well. I'm sorry. Maybe you
okay,
can type in the chat box.
can you now hear me well or?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, I was just wondering how to build the technical knowledge about environmental engineering or even the climate change to cope up with reading the chart. Like as you mentioned, some wonderful insight about climate change and how it can uh, make some change. You explained it using charts. This chart that we can even see in the research papers or some sort of that. So within yeah, we have the nearly in the same field of technical background in environmental engineering, but although it's within my field of study, but I don't have that much technical knowledge. So is there some course or some material that we can get our hand into it to understand how to at least have some technical background in climate change? Or and thank you for this
Yeah,
session.
sure. Thank you for your question. Actually, the sources from the IPCC, there are plenty of sources about climate change science from the IPCC that you can use for that. There are so far 6 assessment reports. So maybe you can refer only to the 6th one because it's the latest, and the 7th report is still in progress, in the process. Also, these, I believe, this kind of programs, like the amazing effort done in this fellowship program, these, I would say, they build very good capacity and more interactive sessions, like attending these sessions that you're actually having right now, and the full program. I would say that's also a very good opportunity. Yeah, I would say that's it. And again, the IPCC and the UNFCCC, they always have courses. You can follow the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. I can share some links also, maybe with Ahmed and the team, and Haneen and the team. Maybe they can also disseminate this information.
Yeah, I think
I hope this answers your question, Mohammed.
that's fulfilled my answers. Thank you very much, Rameen. I hope that you
I'm sorry.
include in our
Can you please mute your mic? Of course, not you, Mohammed. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, please.
Thank you for this answer. That fulfilled my question honestly. I'm gonna get back to UNFCCC or IPCC science report. And thank you for this insightful session.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. Ghadir, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you so much for this amazing lecture. My question is, how can wetlands serve as a nature solution? You know, you just mentioned that wetlands are a natural solution for climate and disaster management, while also not forgetting they're addressing the negative impact that they cause in each country, like my country, such as increasing waterborne diseases, mosquito-borne diseases. So how can we address them as a natural solution for climate and disaster reduction?
Well, thank you for your question. It's very critical for any solution to have the proper environmental studies before it actually is implemented. So, and for each project, of course, and for each solution, there are specific management practices that are responsible for whether making it succeed or fail in meeting its in meeting its purpose, right? So if wetlands are built on scales bigger than the scales they should be, or if they're not managed well in terms of water management and also the, how to say that? Yeah, like the wellness of the ecosystem itself, they can definitely result in some diseases, and even some species might grow and outbreak with like invasive species and so on. So it's very important for any solution before it takes place, because yes, all nature-based solutions are indeed nature-based, so they rely on the nature there. However, if implemented with poor management or in habitats or ecosystems that are not suitable for this solution to take place, without this relevance, they could be very harmful and do the opposite of what we're aiming at in the beginning from implementing it, and they would even cause further harm with more exacerbated risks. Like, so it would be no action would have been a better alternative than actually implementing this project. So this is not only for wetlands, but in general, good management and proper feasibility and environmental studies prior to any project is key. If that also answers your question. Thank you. Ali.
Hi, Tarneem. It's a pleasure
Hi,
for
Ali.
me to attend such a good fellowship here, and thank you for this insight and valuable information that you provide us with. Well, I have two questions. One of them is technical, and the second one is in your view. Let's start from from the first one. What is the main gap between climate data collection and its actual use in policy or risk management? The second one, how can local communities participate in monitoring climate indicators to support and advocate both biodiversity protection and disaster preparedness? As I will mention, I'm from Syria, and we have here a lot of fire crises in the coastal area. And it's, I think, and I guess it's a climate issue. So that is about the question. Thanks in advance.
Thank you for your question. So first, the gap between climate data and policy. Well, there are multiple gaps. Let's put it this way. So one thing is there are not always, especially in developing countries, like the countries of the Arab region, not always that we have the necessary capacity, whether financial resources, institutional capacity, or technical capacity and expertise within. So that's one thing. We might have the solution, but we don't know how to implement because we don't have the infrastructure available for this solution implementation. And hence there are these gaps between the policy implementation and the data that we're basing our policy on. Of course, something else is the negotiations, right? Because negotiations, like what happens at the COP, like the COP27 that Egypt hosted in Sharm el-Sheikh, and any COP under the Paris Agreement, for instance, you can see the developed countries requesting developing countries to mitigate their emissions and to have lower emissions, when we know that economic developing can actually cause greenhouse gas emissions. So while they are the developed countries, they are the key cause for what the whole world is facing right now. They are requesting us to have less emissions when they know that we don't have the capacity to do so. So also something else is more political, and it's more broader that we can think of, especially in what happens in these, closed rooms. But yes, that's about the first point. The second point in terms of communities, actually, if you look at the indigenous communities and indigenous people, let's say the peoples who live in the, the deserts and in the oases, people who are indigenous to their communities, they know very, very well how to interact with their ecosystem. They don't need any advisory or actually we learn from them how they interact with their ecosystems, how they do sustainable consumption of resources that they have. They know very well what to do. So this is one thing, one kind of communities that we can actually all learn from. And as communities, we should educate ourselves on, let's say, daily basis practices on how to be more sustainable and how to be greener, and to also learn and exchange knowledge and exchange experiences as what we're doing right now. So I hope this answers the second question.
Great, more than I asked.
Thank you so much. Saad?
Hey, Ranim. Thank you for. Do you hear me, Brad? You hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for the session and for the amazing information you have given to us. Just my question about you have said that there's a difference between or distinction between climate change indicators and climate change risks. Just want to know how the difference exactly. For example, we can say water stress is a climate change indicator or a climate change risk?
What is it exactly? Sorry.
What? Can you repeat?
What is it? Your question, what is?
What's the distinction between climate change indicator and climate change risk? For example, we can say water stress is a climate change indicator or a climate change risk?
Great question. Maybe let me get back to the slide. Yeah. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. Let me share my screen again. Yeah, so as we can see here, the indicators are more of the, let's say, the impacts of climate change. Let's put it this way. So when the climate is changing, the sea level will rise, right? That's one consequence of climate change. But what is the risk for me as someone living in a coastal zone? What will I experience from sea level rise? That would be coastal flooding. That's a risk. That's a measurable risk of coastal flooding and salinization. These are events that would take place if sea level rises, right? I said that's a bit tricky, but I would say with practice, and the more you know about it, you'll get more familiar with this distinction. Because also when I first heard about it, it was a bit confusing, but this is how I can put it, that the risks are the more sensible and the more direct impacts that we can experience. So if we're talking about water stress, that would be similar to temperature rise, which is an indicator that results in heat stress risks. So we can say that water stress is a risk of, for instance, rainfall variability or decreased rates of precipitation. More clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I said more. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Omar, I'm sorry, can you mute your mic? Can you hear me? Omar, please go ahead.
No.
It's Sarbat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sarbat Omar. Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for arranging this informative presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
As you know, we have genes and threatened due to climate change impacts and human activities. Is there possible to have like a lot of species for future or not? For example, my country is Iraq. Biodiversity in my country is under threat due to climate change impacts and water shortage by Iran and Turkey. They are not give us enough water. What we should do for keeping for future biodiversity like Bangchin? Thank you.
Well, thank you. What I understood, because your voice was breaking, so what I could understand is what to do, what conservation efforts can be done to conserve the biodiversity, right?
I'm sorry. It's political questions. If you would not like to answer it as you like.
Yeah, because this is quite political with the water shortage
Yeah.
component. But maybe one very basic thing would be to because there are global also conventions like the Conservation of Biodiversity Convention or Convention on Biodiversity Conservation, and some other conventions on nature conservation and biodiversity that include some also provisions on how, based on each country context, how we can do these efforts. And there are some even funds for that can support technical assistance, not only funds in terms of financial support, but also technical assistance support that is provided for countries that are vulnerable to specific climate change risks. So that's the closest I can get to answering this question. I'm sorry, but thank you for your question. We have
many questions in chat box if you would like to see it also. Many questions.
Because we still have more hands raised as well. Oh,
Okay.
that's a lot of questions, yes. So there's one question: what is the relationship between climate change indicators and the increasing frequency of natural disasters across different regions of the world? In fact, the frequency is in itself an indicator, right? Because we mentioned one indicator was the extreme weather events. So extreme weather events covers both the frequency as well as the intensity. So this in itself is an indicator for our changing climate, because it tells you how everything around you or around us in our climate, not only the weather, like the short-term impacts, but also the long-term impacts, things are becoming more, or events are becoming more severe and more frequent. So this is in itself the indicator. I don't know how to answer all these questions. Can anyone send? Okay. Are there specific tools to measure IPCC indicators, regional or global levels? Well, there are. If you're referring to the climate change indicators, yes, there are tools. There are some publicly available tools. There is one tool related or by the World Bank. I'll share the link with you after the session, but there is some indicators or interactive maps that you can check for these indicators in each region. How can Arab countries improve early warning systems for cyclones, floods, and sandstorms using climate data? Well, actually, there's one project that we are doing right now at UNDP Egypt country office, we have we're having a study on the design of an early warning system for all the climate-related risks. So it's part of the disaster risk, the country's disaster risk reduction plan to have this early warning system. And part of this early warning system would be the climate change early warning system. So in this design study, we're also aiming, because this is this cannot be a generic question. This is very relevant to each country, right? With the capacities that they have, with the types of risks that they have, etc. It's very relevant to the context. So for our context, for instance, in Egypt, we're now having a study on the something you can call it the status quo. So some situational analysis of what is the situation right now, what data we have, what are the reporting and the data sharing protocols among the different entities, etc., etc. So this is more of a context-specific question, if I can say. But it's, again, very much related to institutional capacity and data availability, and also the quality of the data and the frequency of the data collection. So it depends on the monitoring stations and so on. How can regional cooperation through organizations such as the Arab League or the UNDP, Arab Climate Resilience Initiative, enhance collective resilience to climate-related disasters in the Arab world? Looks like a very complex question that I don't even, I don't quite get the question. Enhance collective resilience. Well, of course, if each country at least has its own disaster risk reduction plan, and then we can share this experience and share this knowledge, let's say, among the countries with what's relevant again. That would definitely be some sort of cooperation. And also we can have on the regional level some projects, regional projects that all aim to the same goal, to achieve the same goal. So there are already some adaptation but it's more on the mitigation side and adaptation side projects. It's already, we have some projects we can say in the pipeline as well for adaptation for different or between different countries through cooperation with different countries in the Arab region. I think maybe we can get back to the hands raised. Ghadir, is this a new hand?
No, actually, I'm not a new hand. I have
Okay.
one more question, if that possible.
Yes, please.
So your answers are awesome. So I have to ask.
I'm sorry.
So I mean, your answers for the question are pretty amazing. So I have to ask you.
Oh no, please go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead.
So what climate indicator are most useful for predicting floods in countries with poor infrastructure? Because my countries have a poor infrastructure. I came from Yemen, actually. So I think that's my question.
Okay. Well, I don't see a direct relation between the indicators and the infrastructure or the readiness of the country to adapt, right? Because these indicators tell you more about the risk. They inform you about the risk that you're about to have, regardless of whether you're prepared to it or not. So, but in general, for floods, these could be extreme weather events. If you're talking more about flash floods, not coastal flooding, I would say. So with flash floods,
Yes.
it would be the extreme weather events. So the rainfall events, storm events, and that would cause flash floods. So Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense right now. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Ghazir. Muhammad, please go ahead.
In Gibbs, climate change has caused self-desertification, biodiversity loss, and declining marine resources, with oasis vegetation dropping over 35% and fish stocks in the Gulf of Gibbs decreasing by 30%. Wetlands and bird habitats have also shrunk, threatening local livelihoods. Addressing these challenges requires restoring irrigation systems, planting drought-resistant native species, harvesting rainwater, enforcing industrial regulations, and promoting eco-friendly technologies. Protecting marine areas, restoring sea grass and coral habitats, supporting sustainable fishing, reforesting, conserving wetlands, and raising environmental awareness are essential. Additional strategies include renewable energy adaptation, climate-smart agriculture, urban greening, community-led conservation, and economy tourism. Together, these measures can restore Gibbs ecosystems, safeguard biodiversity, and foster sustainable development and climate resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Muhammad. I think that's more of assisting me in answering the questions. So say thank you very much. Ali?
Hi again. I asked a lot because I'm with the management support unit as M&D assistant.
Yes,
I would like to
please.
ask from your experience, which should be the priority right now, mitigation or adaptation? A lot of sources mentioned in LinkedIn and in other platforms, let's say, mitigation or adaptation is the priority between them. Which one we can reach the food security, the water security, the etc.
Yes. Well, that's an amazing question also that I think not only us should think of, but all policymakers should and are already thinking of to prioritize whether adaptation or mitigation, given that they're both equally important, right? Because with the changing climate, we want to mitigate our greenhouse gas emissions to have less changing climate. But at the same time, we're very much impacted. So we want to also invest in adapting to these impacts. So which is the priority? I'll just give you some statistics, and I think you'll reach the answer yourself. So in Africa, and I mean with Egypt, Tunisia, and also some other colleagues from Africa that spoke up today, we can see the vulnerabilities and the exacerbated risks that we're facing as a result of the changing climate, right? From food security related issues, water security, and poor infrastructure also in other parts of Asia, in the Arab countries. So given all these risks that we're facing, so these are more relevant to adaptation, right? On the mitigation front or the emissions front, Africa is responsible for 0.6. I'm sorry, Egypt is responsible for 0.6% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, and Africa, the whole continent, is responsible for less than 6% of the whole global greenhouse gas emissions. So given that we already are not contributing much to greenhouse gases, and also along with the fact that we're very much impacted with climate change, what do you think is the priority, adaptation or mitigation? Okay, I think it's clear. And yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot of mitigation projects also because we commit, again, another political aspect. We committed and we pledged mitigation and greenhouse gas emission reduction targets in our nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. And we have to report on these biannually in the biennial transparency report. So we have to excel in our mitigation actions, but it's also a high priority for us to as well consider adaptation actions. I think that's it. Or is there any other questions that I did not answer? I'm also looking at the time. I think
Let time with you, as you love.
okay, no, I'm fine. As long as there are questions, I'm fine. Any more questions? Of course, we will share the slides, or I will share the slides with the team.
Okay.
Okay, I think that was the last question.
Okay, thank you, Tarneem, for your be with us today in the fellowship. It is my pleasure to have you today. Actually, for the people who speak about adaptation, tomorrow we will have another fantastic session with Market from UNDP Egypt office
yeah.
about the adaptation
Yes.
strategies. So all of you will save your questions for tomorrow. Again, I have to announce about the attendance because we will give you like a credit certificate regarding to the fellowship, and you will be here in Egypt, inshallah, in the next December. So you have to attend at least 80% of the 16 lectures that we will provide you. For the slide, for sure, we will share you after approval from all our speakers. And we will deliver it through the email. And for sure, if our speakers like to share their own LinkedIn contact, we will do that after their approval. Tomorrow, inshallah, we will have our lecture from 6 to 7 like today. And then at the day 9 of October, we will have another lecture with a Tunisian speaker who are working before in UNDRR. And she's a Tunisian negotiator in UNFCCC COP events every year. So stay tuned. We will have a very good things for you. What? Do you have anyone have any questions? I think not. Tarneem, can we have like a photo together if you love, Tarneem?
Oh, of course.
So I will invite all the people who are in our lecture to open their camera. Okay, hello Ali, hello Mohammed, hello Mr. Sarbet. I don't know if I can. You still sharing? Yes, it's good. Let me open my camera too. Yeah, everyone just okay, it's fine. Ghadir, today it is a fantastic day for us because we have a question from Iraq to Yemen, then for Tunisia, then for Sudan. So, and Egyptian people also are be here in our lecture. So, okay. I don't know if everyone opened the camera or only boys who are opening the camera. Mustafa, Adam, okay, thank you. No women, yes, some of women start to open their camera. Yusuf, hi. Okay, it's fantastic to see all of you. I hope I will see all of you here in Egypt and Tarneem too to see all of you.
It will
Okay.
be a pleasure.
Thank you, Ali. Okay. Okay, let's say goodbye for all of you and see you tomorrow. Thank you, Tarneem, again to be with us
Thank
today,
you.
and I will see Margaret tomorrow if the God will. Bye-bye.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. It's a
Thank
great
you
pleasure.
so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
your
all
time, guys. I really appreciate it.
and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye for all. Thank you for all as well.